Hello, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, and please check out my channel for other updates. So the last update about Twist of Fate. Prachi finally finds out that Ranbir did not sleep with Rhea and everything was just a fake story from Rhea. And Ranbir confessed his undying love to Prachi and Rhea feels jealous seeing them together. Let's continue. Rhea tells Pallavi that she is completely alone. Her real sister is trying to destroy her home and asks her to help her and says I am all alone. I don't have mom and dad and not even my husband. She asks in front of whom I should cry. She says if we don't stop them now, then it would happen in open in front of everyone. Rhea says Prachi is thinking herself as Ranbir's wife and even Ranbir will feel the same sometimes. She says you have to take responsibility as a mother and a mother-in-law and you have to save my home from destruction. Rhea asks Pallavi to help her and says she is folding her hands in front of her. She hugs Pallavi and cries. Pallavi cries and says I couldn't do anything and I couldn't understand why did you say Shahana is pregnant and says I understand that Prachi is destroying our family respect and she can do it again. She says come with me, I will make it alright. I won't let this happen. Rhea throws her fake tears and walks behind Pallavi while smirking. Ranbir tells Prachi that today it felt really good eating food made by Prachi. Prachi says I did not make it. Ranbir says you have eaten it up and tells her that the taste came from it. He says it is all about the company and says we have spent time with each other after a long time. Ranbir says he used to be very busy, but he used to have food with me at once. Prachi says this happened once and will not happen again and again. You should not get habitual to it. Ranbir makes her Palu talk in his watch and says he did it deliberately. He reminisces on their college incident. Prachi says you have ended everything. She says now the dinner is done. We should go to our respective rooms. Ranbir says I understand that actually you want to talk to me and share your heart talk. Prachi says remove your misunderstanding from your head. It is of no use. Ranbir frees Prachi's Palu from his watch and says he has no control on his heart and used to say that Prachi is not the same, but his heart says that it would always beat for Prachi. Ranbir says he says that the peace is more than pain, which he gets saying He says he bears everything silently and says the attitude, the troubles and the taunts which you give me. Prachi says I did not do anything. Ranbir says I know and he pulls Prachi closer to himself. Ranbir moves his fingers in Prachi's ears and says I will never back off and I will not let you back off. My heart will keep you near me always. Prachi looks at Ranbir. A song plays in the background. Prachi looks at him again. They look at each other. Ranbir says sorry. Pallavi comes there with Rhea. She asks Prachi when will she end her drama. Ranbir asks what did Prachi do. Pallavi asks what is Prachi doing here with you. Prachi says I had food with him. Rhea says Prachi needs excuses to spend time with Ranbir. She says Ranbir knows about her past and present. Then why is Ranbir encouraging her? Ranbir asks what is Pallavi saying. Pallavi says you will not do this again with our family. Ranbir asks her to say clearly. Pallavi says Prachi is playing games with you again and she wants to snatch you from us and she doesn't want to let you and Rhea come closer. She says in your language, you knows well to woo men and you have done this with Siddharth too. Ranbir says enough mom and says you will not say anything about that night or about her character. He says I haven't forgotten myself about that night and I regret for doubting Prachi. Ranbir says I wish I couldn't have doubted Prachi and says that night snatched Prachi's trust from me, which was very precious to me. Ranbir says Prachi doesn't search for chances to talk to me, but I do. Ranbir says Prachi doesn't want to woo me, but I want to woo her. Pallavi says Prachi is doing wrong with you even till now, like always. Ranbir says Prachi has done nothing wrong. I did wrong by marrying Rhea. He says you used to ask me to make a wish on my birthday and says I wish I would have wished this on my birthday and that I can change my past. Ranbir says he apologized to Prachi every day, but he did not get her forgiveness. He says I am ready to give up my respect, my fame and wealth if Prachi talks to me once. Ranbir tells Rhea that he told her clearly that there is nothing between them and he asks her not to pretend to be hurt. Ranbir says Prachi doesn't try to woo him and says that Pallavi should understand him being his mother, what her son needs and likes, and says he likes only Prachi, which was his before. Rhea goes from there angrily and shouted in her room. She messes up the room. Aliyah comes there and asks if she is okay. Rhea says I am not okay and she cries. She says that Ranbir loves Prachi. He loves her so much and he started fighting with mommy supporting Prachi. She says your words cannot pacify me and says Ranbir pours his feelings out and shielded Prachi like a mountain. Ria says Prachi must have gotten rid of all her fears and says that Pallavi couldn't say anything in front of Ranbir. She says Ranbir hid all her sins and told her that he searches chances to get back to Prachi. She says he said that he gets hurt when Prachi doesn't give him any importance. Ria says, why is nobody thinking about me? She says, how can anyone love Prachi so much? Aliyah tries to pacify Ria. Ria says, you told me that you were busy in the meeting when I told you that we have to do something with Prachi. She says, I have to throw Prachi out of Ranbir's heart, and for that, we don't need to emulate Prachi, but we need to send her out of this world. Aliyah smiles and asks, what do you mean? Ria says, you understand what I meant. Vikram comes to Grandma. Grandma asks why he came late. Vikram asks if Pallavi is angry. Grandma says whenever you come late, she gets angry. Vikram says let's go and meet your daughter-in-law. Grandma asks him to go and undo his wife's anger. Vikram says if Pallavi beats me, then what would happen? Grandma says Pallavi is not like that. Vikram says I was taking you for my self-defense and says I would undo you. Grandma says you have to bear the punishment and says she is not wrong and her anger is justified and says I am always with her. Vikram says okay, I will go and meet her. Ranbir tells Pallavi that he hopes that he made himself clear. Pallavi says don't say anything, you have said whatever you wanted to. She tells Pallavi that she thought that she can burn the fire, but she can also build the wall between the mother and the son. Ranbir says you are saying wrong. Vikram comes there and says I know I am late. Pallavi looks at Vikram and cries, hugging him. Vikram asks what happened. Pallavi tells Vikram that Prachi made Ranbir fought with her and asks Prachi not to say anything. She says you came at the right time, Vikram, and tells Vikram that Ranbir questioned my motherly love today and accused me of being a bad mother. Ranbir says I did not say this. Pallavi says that Ranbir said that I should know what my son needs and says you will teach me now. She asks Vikram to tell Ranbir that she gave him everything before he demands for anything. She says today you have splashed water on my doings and says I know what I shall give you and what I shall not, but you are grown up now and you have forgotten the difference between wish and demand. Ranbir looks on. Pallavi tells Ranbir that he used to play with fire in his childhood, but she did not let him. She says she did not let him when he insisted on swimming in the river. She says that if she doesn't give him anything of his choice, then he used to talk about leaving the house. I couldn't sleep all night, thinking what would happen if you have left. Pallavi says I got problem due to crying and you are saying that I am a bad mother. She tells Ranbir that his safety is of topmost priority to her. She blames Prachi for whatever happened. Ranbir says it is not like that. Pallavi says I said so much and asks if something is left. Vikram asks Pallavi to come to the room and rest. Pallavi cries and says everything is over. She hit her foot on the furniture accidentally. Ranbir tries to help her, but Pallavi brushes off his hand. He goes. Prachi says I saw her anger, but today I saw her tears which happened due to me. She says my mother is away from me. I cannot see Ranbir go away from his mother. Never, she cries. Ria tells Aliyah that she has a thought. Aliyah says I ask you to rethink thinking about your concern for your sister. Ria says Prachi is nothing for me. The relationships are completely fake to her. She says parents give birth to their children for their advantage. It is all fake. Ria says even husband and wife think about their happiness and says others' happiness are all nonsense. It is about to give and take. She says I don't want to be a giver but a receiver. I will become selfish. She says I want Ranbir's love and it cannot happen until Prachi is here. She has to go definitely. Aliyah says we should do this work tomorrow and says you will get peace before the puja gets over. Ria asks what do you mean? Aliyah asks Ria to come with her. Prachi recalls Pallavi and Ranbir's argument. Grandma comes there and tells Prachi that she brought sari for her. Prachi says mommy cried today. Shahana asks what happened. Prachi tells her everything and says that she doesn't want to become the reason for their fight. Grandma says they are fighting as their sight and perception are wrong. Shahana tells Prachi that she is not doing wrong with anyone, but wrong things have happened with you. Grandma says I will talk to you in the morning and ask Prachi not to burden herself and come to her wearing this sari. She then asks Shahana to leave Prachi and come to sleep. Shahana goes. Vikram brings Pallavi to the room. Ranbir comes there. Pallavi says, why is Ranbir showing concern here? And says, you were different in the kitchen, so why the concern now? Ranbir says it is not like that. Pallavi says, why was your love and concern not seen in front of Prachi? She asks Ranbir to become Prachi's husband and not her son. Vikram says we will talk later about him. Pallavi asks why. She says now she doesn't feel that Ranbir is her son, but now Ranbir has become someone else's son. Pallavi says, I used to worry for my son, but now my son is in front of me, but he went very far. She says, when you don't love me, then why should I love you? Ranbir says, I love you always. Pallavi says, don't tell me this. You just love Prachi. She says, if you love me, then you wouldn't have gotten me insulted. Ranbir says, why will I insult you in front of Prachi? Pallavi says, Prachi has fed this in your mind and says you would insult the ones who ever supported Rhea. Ranbir says, I can never hurt you. Pallavi says you are changed, and when we haven't accepted Prachi, you separated yourself from us. Pallavi says to Ranbir that we thought that you would get rid of love and come back. She says human get maturity with time and asks if Ranbir never thought that Prachi wants to take him away from them. She asks him to say the truth. Ranbir says nobody can take me far away from you. It is you who is keeping me far. Pallavi says it is my mistake. Ranbir says I cannot explain to you. Pallavi cries, asking Ranbir to go. Ranbir says, okay, I will leave. Vikram tells Ranbir that Pallavi did not mean whatever she told him and says he would undo her. Ranbir looks at Pallavi and goes out of the room. He recalls Pallavi's anger towards him and her words. Ranbir cries, sitting on the floor. Prachi comes there and says, don't fight for me. I know you do all this for me, but don't ruin your relationship for me. I don't need your help, thank you. Ranbir asks, what do you want? Prachi says, I told you what I want. Ranbir says, do you remember why you have returned here? You had said that you wanted your right, and you will snatch my peace, and says you have said this. Prachi remembers. Ranbir says, no doubt, you have succeeded in life, and says whenever you want to show right on me, and see me in trouble when you want to be happy, and you make us fight and then ask me not to fight. Prachi asks Ranbir to stop blaming her for his mistakes, and says I was never the reason. Prachi asks Ranbir not to fight with his mother for her. Ranbir says I will do as you say and asks her to tell him clearly what she wants and says I cannot understand anything. Ranbir says sometimes I feel that you love me and sometimes I feel that you want to stay away from me. Ranbir says I feel that I am the reason for your happiness and sometimes I feel that I am the reason for your sadness. He says I am tired of making you understand and asks her to give him 2 moments of peace. He says he couldn't fulfill his old and new relationships and he feels that he is the reason for everyone's unhappiness and her confusing behavior is beyond his understanding. Ranbir asks Prachi to open her heart and feelings in front of him. He says mom and you doesn't get together and says he is sandwiched between the two of you. He couldn't become a good husband and a good son. Prachi says it is because you married Rhea. Ranbir says Rhea or her aunt doesn't matter to me. Ranbir asks Prachi to tell him if she wants him. He says if we stay here, then we cannot be happy and this is due to Rhea and mommy will say anything and I will fight with her. He says take a call and let's leave from here. He says let's leave from here. Prachi looks on. Ranbir asks Prachi to tell him something and says he can understand that Prachi doesn't want to stay with him and he is pleading in front of her like mad. He hits his hand on the wall. Prachi tries to stop Ranbir but she gets scared. Ranbir asks Prachi not to make his life difficult and he goes from there. Prachi runs behind Ranbir calling him and then she stops. Grandma and Shahana hears them and feels emotional. Alright, thank you so much for watching my videos. Please don't forget to like this video, share it and please subscribe to this channel as I drop new videos every single day. In fact, more than 1 video per day. Thank you so much.